Fine, Mike here. Today we're going to be discussing each champion and what I believe to be their biggest weaknesses. It can be anything from like a physical attribute, a tendency that they have in the fight, and it's just like any sort of weakness that they can be exploited by their opponents, and it's in no particular order. Jumping straight in with the first champion that we'll be discussing, I've got light heavyweight champion Magomed Ankalaev. I think his biggest weakness is putting a stamp on a victory, making sure that everyone, including the judges and everyone watching, knows that he has won that fight. I know that he has a surprisingly small amount of split decisions and almost always wins via a unanimous decision, but every Magomed fight that I watch live, I just watch him like establish a bit of a lead in the fight and then just barely keep it the entire time. Sort of just leaving a lot to be desired by the judges each time. And I almost feel every fight, like even the Rakic fight, I felt like he could just get robbed at any point in the fight. If you look at his fights against like Krylov, Rakic, Blachowicz, even Pereira, all of them are very, very close fight where only one sequence even could be swaying the decision of the judges. Like, if you watch his fights, he'll be just like slightly ahead or it'll just be neck and neck the entire time. And the more times that Magomed leaves these rounds close and goes to these decisions, the more chance that he has the fight to be scored against him. For example, like when Merab is usually going to 48, 47 decisions, but usually Merab will have edged out 3 of those rounds really dominantly, and maybe those other 2 rounds are close. If you look at like a 48-47 for Magomed Ankalaev, it's like 2 really close rounds, 1 dominant round, and then loses 2 rounds. He's never dominating 3 rounds or even dominating a large portion of the fight. It's usually a very tit-for-tat type fight when you get a Magomed Ankalaev fight. So I think that his biggest weakness is just not putting a stamp on the victory, not doing enough to really solidify the win, and just not setting himself apart from the people that he's fighting against. Moving on to the next guy, though, that I wanted to break down, this will be Ilia Topuria. I think Ilia's biggest weakness is going to be head kicks. I was going to do kick defense in general, because he never really checks low kicks, but it doesn't seem to affect him that much, so I'm just going to put a focus on the head kicks. I know that throughout Ilia's career, he has only been hurt by head kicks a couple of times, but I can say that they're the only times he's ever been hurt in his entire career. And the thing is that I've learnt in the past not to ignore these sorts of signs. When a fighter shows a deficiency throughout their career that keeps getting highlighted, it'll eventually be executed properly by the right person. We saw this, and it's a very similar situation in Volk's career, where Volk got head kicked very early in his career in the regional scene where he got finished by a head kick. And then there were other fights where Volk got dropped by Max by a head kick. He got finished by Islam by a head kick. It just eventually got to Volk. The way that he was defending the head kicks was a one-handed defense. It was sort of the way that he gets caught is just going straight above his defense for the head kick. And that's the same thing that Ilia Topuria does. He doesn't really X-block any of the head kicks. And a large portion of the time, he does that exact same defense that Volk did when he got finished by it. And the thing is that if he comes up against like a guy like Makhachev, who digs to the body, digs a lot of knees, does a lot of the same setups to set up that head kick, it could be very, very, like it could just be a unlucky situation where Ilia still tries to defend the head kick but doesn't do the X-block and gets caught on the top of the dome. So I think that this is definitely his only or his biggest weakness, just because we've seen it throughout his entire career. And time again, if you see someone get hit with the same combination or the same shot throughout their entire career, then you know that they're finding it difficult to patch that up. So I still think that he's got that tendency. You do see him block head kicks with one arm quite often. He did that against Max and Volk. So I think that eventually throughout his career, he may get caught with this. Moving on to the next fighter, we've got Alexander Volkanovski. See, I almost wanted to use head kicks for Volk as well, but I think at this point it's a bit too obvious. We've seen him get cleavered by multiple opponents by a head kick now, so it's no like niche opinion to think that Volk's biggest weakness is a head kick. But what I think it is at this point in his career is exiting the pocket. You might think that that's ridiculous after seeing him come up against Diego Lopez, but the thing is that he pulls back straight a lot when he's exiting the pocket. And in the Lopez fight, he did that time and time again. But he did improve on it a little bit, doing a little bit of faking, moving back, and then re-entering the pocket. But I still saw the same thing. He does a straight pullback with his left hand is really low and his rear hand just above his chin. And even in the last fight against Lopez, you'll see him get caught in the second round at the very end of the round doing that exact same thing. That's the same sort of sequence that Topuria was able to catch him with. Same sequence he was able to get caught by Islam Makhachev. So even if you remember the first fight of Islam Makhachev versus Volk, in the first round of that fight, Volk got dropped to a knee via moving backwards and getting caught on the chin the same way. So I think that it's really almost quite obvious that this is the issue that he has, just because if you watch him earlier in his career, you don't really see this same thing. You don't really notice it just because he doesn't get caught doing it. Because when he was more in his prime, he had faster footwork and his range management was better. So he was able to pull back fast enough to actually evade the punches. But nowadays, when he pulls back, he's very, very close to getting hit, or he is just getting hit on the pullback. And even then, you'll see him throw lead leg kicks or lead body kicks, and he'll do that same movement. And I think that if he's going to get finished another time in his career, it'll be by doing that. Moving on to the next fighter, though, we've got Tom Aspinall. See, the thing is about Tom Aspinall is I can't put like a significant weakness here. I'm not prepared to say his cardio is bad because I haven't seen him tired. I can't say that he has a tendency to be over-aggressive because he always gets the finish. The only thing I can see is that he might hold his chin a little bit too high, but I genuinely think he does that as bait. So I'm not going to say anything for sure is the biggest weakness for Tom Aspinall, but I could see maybe him baiting his chin too much will get him caught at one point in his career. So I will think that that's probably the biggest weakness that he has so far. Moving on to the next fight, though, we've got the middleweight champion. We've got Dricus Du Plessis. I think his biggest issue is his takedown defense. See, DDP is a really weird one because a lot of people will just say, oh, it's the falling piano of DDP. It's the fact that he's running on Legos whilst he's punching. That's what makes DDP difficult. But I kind of disagree. I think that his bull rush while he has got his chin on a silver platter helps him because it's a sort of weird way of striking. And it really catches people off guard because he goes above their offense with those looping weird overhands. But I honestly think his biggest weakness is his takedown defense. I'm not saying that in relation to his fight against Hamza. I don't think it plays as much of a factor as people think. But his takedown defense has always been sloppy on the regional career throughout the start of his UFC career and even against guys like Whitaker. They were all able to take him down. Anyone who shoots a takedown on Dricus ends up getting one. Derek Brunson was able to get an easy takedown on him. And the thing is that the people who were getting takedowns on him, like a Brunson or a Whitaker, I don't think that they're the best takedown artists. And they were able to take him down as soon as they shot, especially Whitaker, and the timing of the takedowns wasn't even amazing. The thing is about the way that DDP's striking style works. He runs forward, he brings his feet with his punches, and he's usually punching whilst moving. But that makes him a lot easier to take down. You can get a really well-timed blast double or a cross-face single and just sort of bulldoze Dricus over because he's never got his feet under him. So I think that his biggest weakness will always be those takedowns just because of the style of fighting he has. And I'm not even saying that he's a fish out of water once he lands on the ground. He's actually quite good there. But his wrestling takedown defense is not very good just because of the way he strikes. I think if you catch Dricus at the right time, he'll be able to sprawl your takedown, look really good. But it's just the fact that he does have like a bull rush type style that is sort of able to get caught and just driven through on the takedown. Moving on to the next fight, though, we've got the welterweight champion. I've got Della Maddalena. I think that his biggest weakness is his fight IQ. It was a little difficult to find some solid weaknesses for him because he's not been around for that long. But I think his biggest weakness is going to be fight IQ and decision making. Now, I'm not going to say his decision making, like compared to like a Michael Chandler, is bad, but he does make a lot more questionable decisions than the other champions on this list. I'll give you a couple of them. In the 5th round against Bilal, it was 2-2. He was winning on the feet. He shot a takedown and got reversed. That's the photo that you see in the top right corner. Goes through a little trip, and that's where Bilal was able to use the momentum of that and throw him on the ground. or against Basil Hafez, where he kept pulling guillotine onto bottomless position, or even against Kevin Holland, where he's proven to be weak on the ground, but JDM kept standing with him the entire fight. I think out of all the champions, he probably makes the worst decisions, but so far, his grit and talent has been able to pull him out of these bad situations he puts him in. Look, I'm not saying that his decision-making is awful and abysmal and he'll never be a good champion because of it, but I think his age and his inexperience leads him to trust his instincts and to trust the stuff he does in training a little bit too much, because realistically, we never should be trying to take Bilal down in the 5th round of a fight that could be very close. And realistically, if you're beating up Basil Hafez on the feet, teeing off body shots, you don't pull guillotines on body position. And the thing is that you won't see guys like Volk make those decisions, who I think have like A tier or S tier fight IQ, where Volk, you're not seeing him make these bad decisions. You barely see him make a bad decision throughout any of his fights at all. So I think that JDM, his only and biggest weakness is going to be that fight IQ. I don't think it's the takedown defense like a lot of people think, but I reckon it's definitely the fight IQ, and that can definitely change throughout his career 100%. So hopefully he can patch up that error before, or that sort of weakness before the Islam Makhachev fight. But moving on to the next champion, we've got Merab. I think Merab's biggest weakness, this could be a little bit of a controversial take here, is I think his biggest weakness is a specific combination. It's the straight right hand with the left hook coming back in the pocket. He's been rocked by a lot of opponents with this exact same combination. Umar was able to tag him a couple of times with that in their first fight, or in their fight at UFC 311. And Umar's not that powerful on the feet. Henry Cejudo, another guy who was able to catch Merab with it. And Marlon Moraes almost finished him with that same technique. It's because Merab, when he crashes in, when he gets too close, he'll sometimes try to overthrow his straight shots, or even just try to throw very straight shots when they're almost in elbow range, or they're in tight hook range. So in this instance, their opponents, they slip his straight punches and then go for that hook, or they go for that straight right and end the hook. So they're able to just take their head off center line, miss all of the 3 punches that Merab throws, and just hit him with the perfect counter while his hands are at his waist. Retrospectively, this is sort of why Sean O'Malley stylistically was quite unlikely to catch Merab in their fight, because Merab's weirdly good at defending the straight shots. He doesn't get caught with the straight shots because he ducks quite low and he does a lot of slipping when he shoots. Does a lot of slipping with his overhand right. So it's really difficult to catch him with a straight shot, but that's why these hooks, these tight hooks, as Merab is coming in, as he's throwing his straight shots, are actually his biggest weakness, because he does throw sort of like Ronda Rousey with his punches all the way extended away from his face and doesn't return his punch back to his face. So these tight hooks are able to catch him throughout his fights. And I think one day he will get finished with that. People think that his striking is getting worldly better. But the thing is that we still see him do that. We saw him do it against Sean O'Malley. If you watch every time he does that fake single leg to overhand right, if you think about that as a move, his left hand's touching the leg and then the right hand's coming over the top. There's nothing blocking his face. He does a lot of that in combination, and all it will take one day is one guy with a really clean, really sharp left hook at the same height as Merab to just take him out with that. So I do think that will be his biggest weakness. Moving on to the flyweight champion, we've got Alexandre Pantoja. I can only really put one weakness for him, and that is his boxing defense. The thing about Pantoja is that he hasn't been fully exposed yet. It's not like he's been finished or anything like that. He hasn't even really been rocked that bad, apart from against Figgy. But his boxing defense has even gotten better. But you can still see that he's susceptible to these guys with really good boxing, like a Steve Erceg or a Brandon Moreno. These guys with the longer arms, with the good boxing, with the good fundamentals. These are the sort of guys that Pantoja has found a little bit of trouble with in the past. And the thing is that he's so heavily reliant on his chin, and he's okay to take one to give one. But some of these guys are cleaner than him on the feet. Like if you especially think of the fight at UFC 290 against Brandon Moreno, that fight was razor thin because Moreno was repeatedly and consistently able to catch Pantoja in their fight. And the thing is that Pantoja was able to grit down and get through it. But the thing is that one day someone is just going to catch him and he's just going to go out. When you're so heavily reliant on the chin, it's just it doesn't last forever. Everyone's chin has an expiry date. And the thing is that each punch that you take is one less punch that you can take towards the end of your career. And Pantoja has taken a lot of beatings in his life, and he wins those fights, but you have to take that into account. You have to take into account that he's just getting flogged in some of these fights, and he's able to come back with it. But I think that his weakness is definitely his boxing defense. You don't see him getting out kicked that much. You see he's very good at Muay Thai. His checking is great. His body kicks and head kicks are great. But it's just in that boxing range, he usually flings his arm out, goes for a clinch, because he knows that these guys are a little bit faster in the boxing. So this is all of the male champions and all of their biggest weaknesses. Let me know what you think of them in the comment section below. As always, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.